Winter of 1887 came down hard on Wyoming territory. The blizzard screamed across the plains like it meant to wipe every soul from the land. Snow slammed into wood and iron, the wind biting through clothes and skin without mercy. At the lonely train station in Cheyenne, where lantern light barely pushed back the darkness, a young woman sat frozen on a narrow wooden bench. Her breath drifted out in thin white clouds. Each one felt weaker than the last. Elizabeth Libby Montgomery pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, though it did almost nothing. Her fingers were stiff and numb. Her toes burned with pain from the cold. Beside her sat a small leather bag, worn, but carefully kept. Inside was all she owned in the world. $3 in coins, a faded photograph, and the tools of her trade. That the tools she hoped would save her life. The last train east had left 3 hours earlier. The next one would not come until morning if the storm did not bury the tracks first. The station was unheated. The boarding house had turned her away when she could not pay. Now she sat alone, wondering if she would still be alive when the sun came up. Libby had once been a nurse in Philadelphia. She worked long days in a charity hospital, tending wounds, delivering babies, and holding the hands of the dying. She was good at her work. She believed in it. Then one night changed everything. A doctor tried to force himself on her. She fought back with everything she had. She broke his nose with a bedpan. When the truth came out, no one believed her. His word mattered more than hers. She was dismissed and her name was quietly blacklisted. And no hospital would hire her after that. So she sold what little she had and bought a train ticket west. Out there, she hoped people cared more about skill than rumors. Mining towns needed healers. Ranches needed nurses. She believed she could start again. But her money ran out in Cheyenne, and winter found her before hope did. The wind howled through the station, cutting through her coat like a blade. Libby watched her breath and wondered if this was how it ended. Alone, forgotten, frozen. Then she heard horse hooves. The sound cut through the storm, slow and steady on frozen ground. Libby lifted her head with effort. Through the blowing snow, a rider took shape. A large man on a powerful black horse moving with purpose. It dismounted near the station and tied the reins to the hitching post, even in the dim light. Yet she could see the horse was fine stock and well cared for. The man pushed through the station door, bringing snow and wind with him. He wore a heavy coat and a white hat. Pulled low. His boots were good leather, not fancy, but expensive. He moved like a man used to being obeyed. "Evening, miss," he said, touching the brim of his hat. His voice was deep and warm with a slight dejastro. "Mighty cold night to be sitting out here alone." Libby tried to answer, but her teeth chattered too hard. She managed a weak nod. The man's eyes narrowed with concern as he took her in her blue lips, her shaking hands, the small medical bag at her side. "Name's Jackson Jack Thornton," he said, pulling off his gloves. "I own the Double T Ranch about 20 metros north of here." He was in town on business. He paused, then nodded toward her bag. "Are you a doctor, miss?" "Nurse," Libby managed. "Elizabeth Montgomery from Philadelphia." Jack's eyebrows lifted slightly. A trained nurse was rarer than gold in Wyoming territory. "You're going to freeze to death if you stay here," he said firmly. "This storm's only getting worse. Please let me take you somewhere warm." "I don't have money," Libby whispered. "That's not your concern right now," Jack replied. "Staying alive is without waiting." He shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth made her gasp. It smelled of leather, horses, and clean soap. "Can you stand?" he asked. She tried. Her legs buckled. Jack did not hesitate. He scooped her up, medical bag and all, holding her close as if she weighed nothing. "The hotel's just across the street," he said. "We'll get you warm and fed." As they stepped into the storm, Libby pressed against his chest, his steady heartbeat beneath her ear. For the first time in months, she felt safe. The Cattleman's Hotel glowed with light and heat. When Jack carried her inside, every head turned. The desk clerk rushed forward, found her freezing at the station. "Jack said, I need your best room. Hot food, coffee, blankets, and sent for Doc Williams. Up the stairs, Jack carried her into a large room with a fireplace and solid furniture. He set her gently by the fire and built it higher. It rushed into her bones. Painful but welcome. For the wrath. Coffee. Sick blankets. Jack poured her a cup, guiding it into her hands. Slow, he said. Too much heat too fast can hurt you. As feeling returned, Libby studied him. His face was weathered but clean, and his eyes were kind. You know about medicine, she said softly. You learn things running a ranch, he replied. But nothing like what you know. When he asked why she came west, Libby told him the truth about the doctor, about the dismissal. Jack's jaw tightened with anger. You did right, he said. Out here, your past doesn't define you. Clothes or wrath. Jack turned his back and left the room so she could change. That simple respect meant more to her than he could know. The next morning, sunlight poured over fresh snow. Libby woke warm and alive. A knock came at the door. Jack stood there with breakfast. Over the meal, he made her an offer. A job as nurse on his ranch. Good pay, her own cabin, full supplies, no conditions. She searched his face for a catch and found none. When would you want me to start? She asked. Jack smiled like a man given a gift. Today. The ride to the Doublet Ranch showed Libby a world she had never known. Endless land, clear sky, freedom. The ranch itself was large and alive with work. The men greeted her with respect and relief. Her cabin was warm and ready. Inside was a fully equipped medical room, better than some city hospitals. That night, as she treated her first injured cowboy, Libby realized something had changed. 2 days ago, she had been freezing on a bench, ready to give up. Now she had a home. And the man who gave it to her watched from the doorway, his eyes full of something deeper than kindness, something that would change both their lives forever. Life at the Double T Ranch moved fast, even in winter. Libby learned that on her very first full day. Before sonrise, there was a knock at her cabin door. A ranch hand stood outside holding his arm, blood seeping through a torn sleeve. A slip knife while cutting frozen rope. Libby cleaned the wound, stitched it steady, and sent him off with clear instructions. By noon, she had treated a burned hand, a cracked rib, and a fever that had gone ignored for days. Word spread quickly. The men began calling her Miss Libby with respect in their voices. They listened when she spoke. They followed her instructions. For the first time since leaving Philadelphia, Libby felt useful again. Neither Jack kept his distance during the day. He checked in, made sure she had what she needed, but never hovered. At night, though, he would sometimes stop by her porch. They talked while the fireflies danced in the dark and the Wyoming wind whispered through the grass. They spoke of small things at first. Yeah. His cattle, her training. Slowly, deeper truths surfaced. Jack told her about his first wife, how he had loved her deeply, how losing her nearly broke him. Libby listened without jealousy. She understood loss. She understood scars that never fully healed. Spring arrived early that year. Snow melted into green and the land seemed to wake up hungry for life. It came harder work and greater danger. During roundup season, injuries multiplied. Broken bones, kicked ribs, deep cuts. Libby handled them all. Her hands were steady, her voice calm. Even the toughest men obeyed her without question. One afternoon, a young cowboy named Danny was brought in unconscious. A horse had panicked during a sudden storm and trampled him. His chest was crushed, his breathing shallow. Jack was already saddling a horse to ride for the doctor in Cheyenne when Libby stopped him. He won't survive the ride, she said firmly. I have to operate now. The bunkhouse fell silent. No one had ever seen surgery done on the ranch. Jack hesitated only a moment before nodding. Do what you have to do, he said. For hours, Libby worked under lantern light. Sweat soaked her collar. Blood stained her sleeves. She focused on nothing but saving the boy's life. When it was over, Danny was breathing steady, alive. And when the doctor finally arrived, he examined the work and shook his head in awe. You saved him, he said simply. That night, as Libby washed blood from her hands, Jack stood watching her, pride and fear battling in his eyes. I don't know how to thank you, he said quietly. You already have, she replied. It was after that night that Jack stopped pretending his feelings were only professional. One evening, sitting on her porch beneath a sky heavy with stars, he spoke the truth. I'm falling in love with you, he said. But I won't ask for anything you don't freely give. Libby felt her heart tighten. She had felt it, though. The pull, the safety, the warmth she never thought she would trust again. I feel the same, she said softly. They did not rush. They walked carefully and like two people who knew how easily happiness could shatter. But the bond grew stronger with every shared moment. When Jack finally asked her to marry him, it was simple, honest. No grand speech, just truth. I want to laugh with you, he said. If you'll have me. Libby said yes. The ranch celebrated like it had never celebrated before. The men cheered. Marta cried. Even the land seemed to approve. Bursting into bloom. They married in early summer. No cathedral. No city crowd. Used open sky, wildflowers and people who had become family. Libby walked toward Jack, steady and proud. He looked at her like she was the answer to every prayer he had ever spoken. Their life together was not easy, but it was strong. Libby continued her work, not just on the ranch, but in nearby towns. People traveled miles to be treated by her. And Jack supported her in everything. He never questioned her place or her power. He stood beside her, not in front of her. Then the past came riding back. A telegram arrived from Cheyenne. A doctor from Philadelphia had come west. Dr. Harrison, the man who had tried to destroy her. He was accusing her of practicing medicine without proper standing. Fear crept into Libby's chest. Sharp and cold. Jack read the telegram, then folded it carefully. It won't hurt you, he said. Not here. Harrison arrived with a marshal wearing a smug smile and carrying papers filled with lies. He questioned Libby's character, her skill, her right to work. Jack did not let him finish. We'll have a hearing, he said calmly. And you'll hear the truth. The courtroom was full. Ranchers, townsfolk, patients Libby had saved. But the doctor from Cheyenne testified in her favor. Men spoke of lives she had saved when no one else could. When the truth about Harrison came out, his reputation collapsed. The judge ruled in Libby's favor, recognizing her right to practice across the territory. The crowd erupted. Jack held her close, whispering, "It's over." But the story did not end there. What Libby and Jack built together began to ripple outward. A hospital, a training school. Bid their care for places forgotten by the world. Their partnership became a model. Their love, a legend, whispered across the West. And it all began on a freezing bench on a night when one man chose kindness. But the greatest chapter of their story was still ahead. The years that followed proved that love alone was never what made Jack and Libby Thornton remarkable. Yet it was what they built together that turned their story into legend. After the hearing in Cheyenne, Libby's name traveled faster than any train. Ranches, mining camps, and small frontier towns sent word asking for her help. Women in labor, men crushed in cave-ins, children burning with fever. Libby never turned them away. If she could reach them, she went. If she could help, she did. Jack made sure she never rode alone. He arranged escorts, supplies, and safe places to rest. He never questioned her judgment. When she said something was needed, he made it happen. Their marriage was not built on control or pride, but trust. The Double T Ranch grew with them. More land, more cattle, more families. Jack built proper housing for workers and their wives. A school followed, then a small clinic with Libby training local women in basic care. Though what started as a ranch slowly became a community. In the spring of 1890, Libby gave birth to twin boys. The delivery was hard, but she was strong. Jack stayed at her side the entire time. Fear written across his face like he was the one in labor. When the cries of Thomas and Jackson Jr. filled the room, he dropped to his knees and wept openly. 2 years later, a daughter followed. They named her Rebecca, honoring the woman Jack had once loved with Libby's blessing. There was no jealousy in her heart, only understanding. Love did not erase the past. It honored it. Libby continued her work even as a mother. She balanced care for her children with care for the territory. Her hospital in Cheyenne became the first true medical center in the region. And her nursing school trained women who went on to serve in places most people would never dare travel. Jack stepped into leadership beyond the ranch. He served in territorial government, pushing for roads, rail access, and state food. He invested wisely, but always with purpose. He believed wealth meant responsibility. Their names became known far beyond Wyoming. Newspapers told the story of the millionaire cowboy and the nurse he found freezing at a train station. But those who truly knew them understood the truth. It was not money that defined them. It was character. As years passed, their children grew strong and capable. Thomas took to the land. Jackson Jr. followed his mother's path into medicine. Rebecca carried both strength and kindness in equal measure. Age came quietly. Jack's hair turned silver. Libby's hands grew slower, but never unsteady. They spent evenings on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the mountains, speaking less because words were no longer needed. Jack passed first, one calm autumn morning. Libby held his hand until his final breath. She did not cry then. She simply whispered that she would see him soon. 3 months later, she followed him. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch. The land they had built, the life they had shared, the world they had changed. The inscription was simple, forever and always. A love that made history. Visitors still come to Cheyenne to see the place where it began. The station is gone now, replaced by memory. But in a museum nearby, a small leather medical bag rests behind glass. Next to it, a wedding ring worn thin with years of devotion. Together, may they tell a story the West never forgot. A story that proves sometimes history does not begin with power or ambition. Sometimes it begins with kindness on a cold,